PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we're going to be doing a throwback for you, as we are going to be doing a player profile on a person who has been a very well-known person to the Vegas Golden Knights organization, someone who embodied the city of Las Vegas even before your Vegas Golden Knights showed up. And the person we're going to be talking about and the person we're doing a player profile on here on Vegas Hockey Hub, we will be discussing Deryk Engelland. And Deryk Engelland, like I said, somebody who the Vegas Golden Knights fans and people all around the world are very familiar with, and someone that I am looking forward to talking about on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub. So we're going to get into all of that and talking about all of it here on Vegas Hockey Hub, doing our throwback player profile, this time on Deryk Engelland. And before we get into that, I very want to quickly say, go to PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. We have over a dozen shows on the platform, so I highly recommend to everyone all around the world going to our website, www.prconnectionsradio.com, and checking out all the amazing content on the network. And then I want to give a shout out to Classy Communications, our sponsor on PR Connections Radio. Very helpful. We appreciate all the stuff that's going on over there with Classy Communications. And I once again say thank you for being the sponsor of PR Connections Radio. And go to our social media pages as well at PR Connections Radio and at Vegas Hockey Hub. So for Deryk Engelland, he had a really interesting career from top to bottom. Deryk Engelland, this is a guy who his career from when he was in juniors to when he was in the minors to getting to the NHL just to begin with was a long, storied road. And so much that we're going to cover and go over on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. But you know what? Let's start at the very beginning. Because Deryk Engelland started out in the Western Hockey League. And not only did he start out in the Western Hockey League, but he actually played for the Moose Jaw Warriors. And, you know, when it comes to the Moose Jaw Warriors, this is an organization that, you know, if you understand junior hockey and if you know a little bit about junior hockey, you will know that the Moose Jaw Warriors have had some really good NHL talent that have actually been in the ranks and have been on the Moose Jaw Warriors. And when it comes to junior hockey, the WHL, those five seasons that Deryk Engelland played in the Western Hockey League, he actually would be on the same roster as future WHL people who would go to the NHL, guys like Dustin Boyd, Johnny Boychuk, and Troy Bauer, who they actually ended up being teammates down the line with the Calgary Flames organization. But we'll get back to that in just a second. So Deryk Engelland spends 5 seasons with the Moose Jaw Warriors, and this is a team that had very interesting results. They would make the Western Hockey playoffs for a few of those seasons, but unfortunately, the Moose Jaw Warriors would not win the prestigious Memorial Cup, which goes to the best team in all of junior hockey, regardless if it is the Western Hockey League, the Canadian Hockey League, regardless of where you are at. If you are in the WHL, if you are in the Quebec, the QMJHL, or if you are out there in the OHL, which is the Ontario Hockey League, the BCHL, the British Columbia Hockey League. There's so many leagues out there in Canada for the Canadian Hockey League. But overall, the WHL, Deryk Engelland spent 5 seasons there, and his tenure with the Moose Jaw Warriors, he actually had 15 goals, 52 points, and a whopping 500 penalty minutes, and he spent well over 270 games playing in juniors, playing for the Western Hockey League. So Deryk Engelland, that was where he got his start. That's where his career as a hockey player started out there with the Moose Jaw Warriors. And for Deryk Engelland, in 2000, he would be selected in the NHL entry draft, as he would be selected by the New Jersey Devils. However, Deryk Engelland would never play for the New Jersey Devils. In fact, he would never even suit up in the minors for the New Jersey Devils, as he would end up signing as a free agent with the Calgary Flames ECHL affiliate, and where a part of our story begins, as Deryk Engelland would be with the Las Vegas Wranglers out there at the Orleans Arena. And the Orleans Arena back in the day was the main hockey arena before the Vegas Golden Knights, before the Henderson Silver Knights, before all of these teams would show up. The Las Vegas Wranglers replaced the Las Vegas Thunder back in the day. So Deryk Engelland would be on the Las Vegas Wranglers roster during their inaugural season back in 2003 out there at the Orleans Arena. And Deryk Engelland would suit up for the Las Vegas Wranglers and play in 03-04, and then in 04-05, he would be out there at the Orleans Arena playing for the Las Vegas Wranglers. And during the 2 seasons that Deryk Engelland would suit up in Las Vegas, he would only have 7 goals, 27 assists, and over 200 penalty minutes in around 110 games played while in Las Vegas. Now, because he played those 2 seasons in Las Vegas, he would have a connection to the city of Las Vegas, and over a decade later, that would come back and we would have a very nice story that would happen about a decade later. So being in Las Vegas, the ECHL, which is AA for people who do not know about minor league hockey. So being with the Las Vegas Wranglers, he would actually spend 1 more season in the ECHL with the Wheeling Nailers, which would be the affiliate of the Washington Capitals. However, Deryk Engelland would leave the Calgary Flames organization after 2004-2005, and he would join the Washington Capitals organization. More importantly, he would join the Hershey Bears, which are the AHL affiliate, the AAA affiliate of the Washington Capitals organization. And Deryk Engelland, interesting enough, would spend a couple of seasons with the Washington Capitals organization, going back and forth between the ECHL and the AHL. And not only would he play a good amount of games with the AHL and with the Hershey Bears, but the Hershey Bears in 2006 would make it all the way to the Calder Cup final. And not only did they make it to the Calder Cup final in 2006, but that roster would go all the way and win the Calder Cup. So Deryk Engelland would win the AHL version of the Stanley Cup, aka the Calder Cup. So Deryk Engelland doing very well for himself, being part of that roster with the Hershey Bears. And then in 06-07, which is what you see behind you on your screen, he actually would not only be one of the best defensive pairings in the AHL's Hershey Bears organization, but he would actually be a good contributor to that 06-07 team. As a matter of fact, if you look at the roster that's right there on your screen, there is a lot of good talent that would be on the Hershey Bears that would eventually make it to the NHL. You see guys like Matt Hendricks. He spent time in the NHL. You have people like Jeff Schultz. He actually was a contributor for a good amount of years. And you also see right back there, Tyler Sloan, who actually spent time with the Las Vegas Wranglers as well of the Hershey Bears alongside Deryk Engelland. So overall, in 06-07, him being with the Hershey Bears, they would go back to the Calder Cup, try to repeat in the Calder Cup playoffs, and they would make it all the way to the Calder Cup final. So for the second year in a row, Deryk Engelland would be in the Calder Cup finals. However, this one would not end up being a repeat. They would actually lose in the Calder Cup finals to the Hamilton Bulldogs. So very unfortunate for them. But Deryk Engelland second year in the AHL, second straight Calder Cup Finals appearance. That is good for him. Now, after the 2006-2007 season, Deryk Engelland would leave the Washington Capitals organization after 2 seasons, and he would take his talents to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins would have him be in the AHL for 3 seasons. And what he would be out there in Scranton, for all my people who watch The Office, you're very familiar with Scranton. They actually had a scene where they had a hockey jersey that was being worn during that show. That is what that uniform was. In 2007-2008, Deryk Engelland, while playing for the Penguins, he would have actually a really good season in the AHL, racked up 17 points, played every single game, got a good amount of penalty minutes, over 100, and during the 07-08 season, they would make it to the Calder Cup playoffs. And not only would they make it all the way to the Calder Cup finals, but that meant for the 3rd year in a row, Deryk Engelland would be playing in a Calder Cup final. And not only that, but you had a situation where in 2008, during the Calder Cup finals, Deryk Engelland would be playing against the Chicago Wolves, who, by the way, ended up being a future AHL affiliate of the Vegas Golden Knights during Deryk Engelland's tenure with the Golden Knights organization. But Deryk Engelland, 23 games, was there for the Penguins during the 08 Calder Cup final run, and they lose in the Calder Cup finals to Chicago. So, to recap this very quickly. So in 2006, he wins the Calder Cup with the Hershey Bears. 2007, he makes it to the Calder Cup finals where the Hershey Bears lose to Hamilton. And then in 2008, he makes it to the Calder Cup finals again, and the Penguins lose to the Chicago Wolves. So, if you're someone like Deryk Engelland, you might be considered a good luck charm, considering you made it to the Calder Cup finals back-to-back-to-back years. And you did win a Calder Cup in 2006. For Deryk Engelland, 2008, 2009, 2010, he would end up playing for the Penguins in the AHL for 2 final years. He also would end up being in the Calder Cup playoffs during those 2 seasons, racked up a good amount of games during that time period, but they unfortunately did not make it to the Calder Cup finals during 09 or 010. So Deryk Engelland, during this time period that he is playing in the AHL, his stat line at the end, and by the way, give a shout out to Hockey Reference for this, 14 goals, 42 assists for 56 points. Deryk Engelland would rack up over 600 penalty minutes in over 300 career AHL games during his time with the Penguins and the Bears. So, for Deryk Engelland, he had a well-accomplished and a well-acclaimed AHL career. And considering that he spent 5 seasons in the AHL, he spent 2 seasons in the ECHL, it seemed like Deryk Engelland was going to be a minor league guy, right? It felt like Deryk Engelland, if you just looked at his career on paper, he was going to be just an AHL guy, minor league defenseman at most. But fortunately for Deryk Engelland, on November 10th, 2009, he would make his NHL debut, and even though he was only 27 years old, that would be considered an aging number for an NHL debut. But for Deryk Engelland to go from being drafted in 2000, playing 5 years in juniors, spending 7 years in the minors, to make your debut against the Boston Bruins, to have your name finally on the back of an NHL jersey, to have you be in the lineup in the NHL, that is an accomplishment for Deryk Engelland. Now, Deryk Engelland only played 9 games in the 2009-2010 season. As I've mentioned to before, he was in the AHL out there in Scranton with the Penguins. But for Deryk Engelland, this set up what his career would be for the rest of his tenure. As after 2009-2010, Deryk Engelland would never be in the AHL again. Deryk Engelland would never suit up and play in an AHL game ever again. As in 2010-2011, he would play in his first full season in the NHL for Pittsburgh. He had 10 points, but a whopping 120 penalty minutes. To say that Deryk Engelland is a fighter would be an understatement. To say that Deryk Engelland is a brawler would be an understatement there. This is someone in Deryk Engelland who would fight pretty much anybody when it comes to a teammate. This is someone at Deryk Engelland that if you went after Crosby, if you went after Malkin, if you go after Letang, Deryk Engelland is probably going to go after you. Him, Eric Goddard, there were so many people in that Pittsburgh Penguins team back in the day that would rough you up, that would get in the fights if needed. And Deryk Engelland was that type of guy. So 10 points, 120 penalty minutes in his first full season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And even though they missed the playoffs in 2010-2011 due to injuries, in 2011-2012, Deryk Engelland would be on the playoff roster for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And more importantly, he would actually play on the Penguins on a defensive pairing and would score his first ever point in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2012. This is also a 2012 season where Deryk Engelland would score 17 points and would have over 50 penalty minutes in 73 games. So he had his best career performance up to that point. He also had some controversy, though, as unfortunately, in the first 3 seasons of playing in the NHL, Deryk Engelland would get suspended for a hit on Blackhawks forward Marcus Kruger. I'm going to give credit to Chicago Tribune for this one. This is where I read the article. But overall, for Deryk Engelland, he gets suspended for that action, for his performance against Marcus Kruger out there at the beginning of his career. Unfortunately for Deryk Engelland, after 2011-2012, this ended up kind of being his peak in Pittsburgh, as after having a halfway season in 2012-2013, he would play majority of the season in 2013-2014, but only having 6 goals and 6 assists during that time period. But for Deryk Engelland, his career would not be done. For someone like Deryk Engelland, his career would not end with the Pittsburgh Penguins, as after 7 seasons playing with the Pittsburgh organization, after 7 seasons going from the AHL to the NHL, being on the defensive pairing, playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Deryk Engelland would take his talents to the Calgary Flames. And Deryk Engelland would sign a 3-year contract with the Calgary Flames and would leave Pittsburgh and go to Calgary after 2014 offseason. And overall, for Deryk Engelland, this is somebody who was being known as a veteran defenseman, as being someone that if you needed a brawler, if you needed someone to defend your teammate, to be that type of guy, Deryk Engelland was becoming that player. Now, overall, for Deryk Engelland, after that 2014 offseason, he goes to Calgary, and he showed leadership. When he went to Calgary, he was someone that would help out the younger guys. And what I respected about Deryk Engelland is that he did not back down from anybody. Even he had a fight with Milan Lucic when it was Edmonton versus Calgary. Deryk Engelland lays a stiff hit on Connor McDavid, and Milan Lucic, Deryk Engelland knows the rules, immediately fights him within 5 seconds. Or how about during the playoffs between Calgary and Vancouver, where Deryk Engelland would fight anybody? Brad Richardson, let's go. Derek Dorsett, here we go. Let's drop the gloves. That is what Deryk Engelland was all about in Calgary. Just to kind of set the tone there, when it came to Deryk Engelland and his time in Calgary, his final stat sheet should tell you all you need to know about him. Is that Deryk Engelland, 3 seasons in Calgary, he had 39 points, but a whopping 190 penalty minutes in over 220 games while in Calgary. Deryk Engelland, his value, his net worth was being a leader. And more importantly, when they made it to the playoffs, 2 of the 3 years he was in Calgary, he suited up and was an everyday member of the Calgary Flames. So after being in the playoffs for 2 of those 3 seasons, and after being a veteran who was in his mid-30s at this point, Deryk Engelland, unfortunately, would be left exposed in the 2017 NHL expansion draft. And after Deryk Engelland was left exposed in the expansion draft, he would end up being taken by your Vegas Golden Knights. And not only was I there for the 2017 NHL expansion draft, but I can tell you that the crowd reacted very positively to Deryk Engelland being selected, because there are hockey fans in Las Vegas who remembered the decade prior. There were people in Las Vegas who remembered that Deryk Engelland was a Las Vegas Wrangler. So, not only would Deryk Engelland spend he was on a 1-year deal. Deryk Engelland would end up signing a 1-year contract extension with the Vegas Golden Knights after the 2017 NHL expansion draft. I will give credit to Cap Friendly for that information. Thanks to Cap Friendly, by the way, you do a lot of work. Now, for Deryk Engelland, this is somebody who, when you study and look at what he did for the organization, not only was he a leader, but Deryk Engelland ended up being one of the best veteran presence that the Vegas Golden Knights could have had. Now, a lot of people like to give credit to Marc-Andre Fleury. People like to give credit to a bunch of players who were veterans at the time, James Neal, David Perron. But Deryk Engelland became a voice of reason for Vegas. And not only did Deryk Engelland end up becoming a voice for Las Vegas, but he became a voice for the entire community. As after the 1 October shooting that happened in 2017, on opening night, Vegas Golden Knights, Arizona Coyotes on October 10th, 2017, Deryk Engelland would have a speech before the game kicked off. And this is a speech that people in Las Vegas remember to this very day. We are Vegas strong. Just remember that. We are Vegas strong. And Deryk Engelland became a very good voice to have in the locker room. And, he was a guy who was a second defensive pairing, third defensive pairing throughout his tenure in Vegas, but he was valuable. In fact, Deryk Engelland was so valuable, they kept giving him 1-year contract extensions to stay in Vegas after that extension was up. And for a guy like Deryk Engelland, he played 3 seasons with the Golden Knights. Deryk Engelland was somebody that was there for every single year that the Vegas Golden Knights made the playoffs. So I want you to think about this for a minute. 2017, 2018, they go to the Stanley Cup final. And Shea Theodore, young guy, someone who is going to have a bright future with the Vegas Golden Knights, they team him up with Deryk Engelland. And then after that, when Braden McNabb and Nate Schmidt, they get broken up, and Shea Theodore goes over to Braden McNabb, what do? They have Deryk Engelland team up with guys like Colin Miller. They have Deryk Engelland team up with younger guys like a Zach Whitecloud, for example, because they understood that Deryk Engelland is a very good voice to have in the locker room. And as a matter of fact, Deryk Engelland, after his 11 seasons playing in the NHL, he did what he always does best, which is fight. It didn't matter if it was Kyle Clifford, like you see on your screen right there. Didn't matter if it was Ryan Reeves when he was in St. Louis. Or it didn't matter if it was somebody, for example, like a Tom Wilson out there in Washington. Deryk Engelland was a fighter. And more importantly, he's a team player. And that team player mentality is what was so valuable about Deryk Engelland. So, for Deryk Engelland, throughout his 11 seasons playing in the NHL, here was his final stat line. I want to say thank you to Hockey DB for this stat. His 30 goals, 97 assists, had over 125 points in his career. But check out that stat line. In over 600 games in the NHL, Deryk Engelland racked up around 580 penalty minutes. So to say that Deryk Engelland's value was provided by going to the penalty box, that would be a drastic understatement. Now, what happened to Deryk Engelland after he retired? Deryk Engelland would join the Vegas Golden Knights in their front office, not only as an assistant to Bill Foley, but during the pandemic, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when they shortened a lot of things in the hockey, Deryk Engelland was provided a usage in the AHL. As in the AHL, the Henderson Silver Knights had a coaching situation that needed to be developed and handled last minute. Deryk Engelland, over 15 years after his last game played in the AHL, would be behind the bench and would be the head coach as an interim basis for the Henderson Silver Knights. And what's interesting about all of that is that Deryk Engelland went from somebody who was looked like a career AHLer. Deryk Engelland went from somebody who played around 400 games in the AHL to then a decade later being an interim coach for the Henderson Silver Knights. Wow. So for Deryk Engelland, like I mentioned before, 600 games he played in the NHL. Regardless of who you are as a person, anyone who can play 11 seasons in the NHL is commendable. Anyone who can suit up for 600 games with multiple organizations, you have to give a round of applause to. And for Deryk Engelland, I look at him and I see what he did for Vegas. I commend what Deryk Engelland did for the city. His speech he did after 1 October is still something you're going to remember to this day. And overall, for Deryk Engelland, I appreciate what he did for Las Vegas. Regardless if you're at 702 or the 725, Las Vegas is going to remember Deryk Engelland for what he did as a Wrangler, what he did as a Golden Knight, and even his short tenure as an interim coach for the Silver Knights. Deryk Engelland will forever be Vegas remembered. So, for Las Vegas, want to do a throwback player profile real quick. I understand that when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, we are a few days removed from the Dallas series. So that loss is still fresh in your mind, and I get that. But we're going to have so much content that's going to be released for you for Vegas Hockey Hub. So stay tuned for all of that. And until next time, continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey. And go, Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.